They landed where no one dared. The sky above the alien jungle shimmered with electric clouds. As the human dropship descended roaring with fire and hunger, the ground below trembled with ancient warning, but the humans inside the ship laughed. One of them munched on dried meat, while another checked his blade. A third cleaned his teeth with a wire and grinned toward the jungle outside. None of them seemed scared, and that alone sent chills through the alien observers who watched from hidden orbital drones above. They called this planet Severk 9, a death world by every classification, surrounded by acid rivers, unpredictable gravity zones, and storms that could crush metal within seconds. But worst of all was the Galactic, the apex predator, the beast that had outlived the last 3 extinction cycles on this planet. It ruled the jungle with silence and fury. Its roars alone had killed some species through fear and nerve shock, yet the humans named their mission Operation Galactic Grill. And that was not a joke. They walked out of the ship in light gear, carrying no heavy artillery, no tanks, no mechs, just knives, rope, old rifles, and something that looked like a spice pouch. One alien general watching this clenched his jaw. These creatures must be insane, he whispered to his assistant. They know what lives there. They know no one comes back from those trees. But the humans went in singing, walking in rhythm, their boots crunching through red moss and steaming roots, while the drones above tried to keep up. One human stopped near a tree, scratched a symbol into it, and then marked it with his blood like it was a joke, like he wanted the Galactic to find them. The alien council demanded to speak with the humans, but received only static. The jungle scrambled their signals, but the humans were not trying to hide. They wanted to be found. Deep in the jungle, the air grew hot and thick like syrup. Sounds vanished, replaced by a low hum that vibrated the bones. Animals fled as the humans passed. Insects avoided them. Even plants seemed to retreat from their scent. And then a sound echoed, not from the trees but from beneath the ground. The roar came from below. The vibration turned to a pulse. The earth moved slightly, and one of the humans laughed, slapped another on the back, and said, "Guess it knows we're here, Hope. It's hungry." The other replied with a grin. Alien scientists watching the seismic data gasped. That is the Galactic. That is definitely the Galactic. They should run, they should hide, but the humans instead set camp in a clearing, laid traps, not to protect themselves but to lure the beast. They cooked meat over an open fire, joked about the spices, argued over recipes, while knowing full well something ancient and terrible was watching them from the shadows. One drone caught the image for just a second, a blur of black muscle, 6 eyes to rows of teeth, a tail like a whip crackling with bioelectricity. The Galactic was real, and it was circling them. The alien commander screamed at the screen, "Pull them out now, emergency extraction now." But no signal could reach them. The jungle swallowed all frequencies, except the deep pulse of the Galactic and the steady beat of the human drums round their fire. One human stood up, raised his hands to the trees, and shouted, "We are here, beast. We are tired, hungry, and ready to feed on your bones." Silence fell. The jungle breathed in, then out. Then the roar came louder than before, shaking leaves and skies, and the humans stood not in fear, but in joy. Blades drawn, eyes sharp, muscles ready. They didn't see a monster, they saw a challenge and possibly a meal. The drones watching started to fail one by one, losing signal, blurring into static. The last thing seen by the alien observers was a massive shadow leaping into the air, and the humans charging forward, not away, not hiding, but running toward death with open arms and hungry eyes. The signal cut, the screen went dark, and the alien command ship silence ruled. No one moved. The general collapsed into his chair, muttering, "They went to fight it like hunters, not soldiers, not researchers. They went as if they were going to conquer a god." The assistant stared at the blank screen and whispered, "Not conquer, General. They went to cook." The jungle floor trembled beneath their boots as the humans charged without hesitation toward the roar that shook the very leaves off the trees above them. Vines snapped underfoot, and the air turned electric, heavy with the scent of wild death. But the humans grinned like children set loose in a candy store. One of them, a tall man with scars across his face, leapt over a fallen log and shouted back to the others, "Eyes on the tail and stay light on your feet." The Galactic burst from the foliage like a nightmare made flesh, its body larger than any tank, its scales rippling with heat and shadow. 3 heads roared in different tones, each more terrible than the last. The creature's breath melted bark, and its 6 legs moved with the grace of a predator who had never known defeat. Yet the humans did not stop. They split formation like dancers in a deadly play, surrounding the beast with instinct and strategy rather than fear. One human threw a flare to the left, blinding the leftmost head, while another tossed meat soaked in fuel near the right claw, confusing the beast for just a second. That second was enough. The scarred man dove forward, jamming a blade into one of the legs, not to kill but to mark, to provoke, to paint a target, and the Galactic responded with fury. The middle head lunged toward him, but a female soldier pulled him back, just in time, throwing a flash detonator into the open mouth of the beast with perfect timing and brutal laughter. The explosion echoed, but did little damage. It was not meant to injure. It was meant to insult, and it worked. The Grolak roared and chased the humans deeper into the jungle, where more surprises awaited. Every tree had been rigged, every path chosen carefully by these strange, fearless predators from Earth. Alien eyes in distant orbit watched the chaos unfold in disbelief. The Grolak was not just fighting, it was confused, angry, cornered, and for the first time perhaps in centuries, unsure of its own power. The jungle shook with each of its steps, but the humans ran in rhythm, as if they had trained on this world for years, ducking under acid vines, leaping over carnivorous plants, never missing a beat until they reached the chosen spot, a clearing surrounded by cliffs with narrow escape routes just wide enough for human bodies, but not for a beast of that size. The trap was ready, and they knew it. The humans turned and faced the beast as it crashed into the clearing, growling, its eyes glowing with the light of raw rage. But the humans had stopped running. They stood side by side, knives raised, guns ready, and then without a word they moved as one. The female soldier rolled beneath the beast's legs, jamming explosive charges into each limb, while the others distracted the heads with flares and screams. One even jumped onto the creature's back, driving a spear made from hardened alien bone. Between the armored ridges sparks flew, blood sprayed, the jungle hissed, and the sky howled. But the humans did not fall. The beast screamed and reared, but slipped on its own blood, stumbling back into the very trap the humans had laid, a pit of sharpened obsidian, coated in neurotoxins and anchored by gravity nets. The Grolak crashed into the trap, roaring in agony as the humans stood around the edge, watching in silence. One by one they removed their helmets, wiped the sweat and blood from their faces, and then finally the scarred man said, "Fire now," and they all pressed the triggers of their remote detonators. The pit exploded with light and fire, and the scream that followed was not just pain, it was legend dying. The Grolak, the monster, the myth, had fallen not to lasers or bombs from space, but to grit, teamwork, and raw human madness. The jungle went silent, even the wind stopped to listen, as smoke curled into the sky and the humans stood panting, smiling. One of them pulled out a small box, opened it, and took a bite of a protein bar before saying, "Well, that was fun. Who's up for cooking?" The scouts, watching through damaged drone feeds, whispered prayers in their native languages. They had seen war, they had seen extinction, but nothing prepared them for humans treating death like a sport. The Grolak was gone, and the humans had not just survived, they had dominated, and worse, they looked hungry, as if the hunt was only step one, as if they were just getting started. The alien council gathered in the grand chamber with tension in the air so thick it could suffocate. Every screen displayed static. Every signal from the drones had cut out at the same time, and the last image shown was burned into their minds. The humans charging the Grolak, with fire in their hands and laughter on their lips. A scene so unnatural it made the eldest scholar of predator behavior tremble in silence. The head of council, a tall figure with silver skin and wide glowing eyes, leaned forward and demanded the footage again, play the last moments again and again. They watched the humans move like one body, dancing around death, as if they had done this 100 times before, and perhaps they had the room buzzed with fear and disbelief. One council member rose and shouted, "This is impossible. No species has ever returned from the Grolak's domain," and they did not just return. They taunted it, they played with it, and then the signals vanished. Does this mean they failed? Or does this mean they succeeded? No one knew, and that was what terrified them more than anything. Before answers could be debated, a new signal came through, raw, jagged, and filled with noise, but within it was video from a human drone, one of their private recordings. Not government broadcasted, not official. It had survived, and it showed everything. The footage began with the humans setting up strange devices around the jungle, each one labeled in their language with words like spice trap and tail bait. Their behavior was not reckless, it was calculated, and the way they laughed through it all sent chills through the observing aliens. Then came the Grolak, the creature of nightmares, roaring through the trees, shaking the jungle with its rage. It was real, it was unstoppable. And then the humans ran, but not in fear, they ran with purpose, drawing the creature to a narrow pass, setting off flash bombs, tossing synthetic meat soaked in something that made the Grolak lose focus. And then in the clearing the fight began, and the camera showed it all. One human jumped onto the beast's back, while another drew its attention with fire. A third placed explosives into the legs of the monster, moving faster than any trained soldier on the council worlds. And when the creature fell into the pit, when the jungle exploded in fire, the silence in the council chamber was complete. The camera caught the humans afterward, standing covered in blood and smoke, not cheering, not boasting, simply working together to begin skinning the beast for meat and bone. One even pulled out a tiny device and played music. While preparing a fire pit the council could not understand the music, but the sound of humming and cooking over a burning predator was clear enough. "They are roasting it," one ambassador whispered, unable to look away. "They are cooking the Grolok. And they are happy." The video ended with the humans pulling out spices from their packs, seasoning the meat with practiced care and taking bites while still warm. They did not run, they did not scan, they did not even report back. They simply ate and smiled as if this were normal. The council chambers fell into chaos. Voices rose, arguing about what to do next. One side said the humans must be honored, respected, their strength unmatched. Others screamed that they were dangerous, unpredictable, capable of anything. The head of council raised a hand and silence returned. These humans did not conquer with force, they conquered with understanding. They knew the beast before they faced it. They studied its mind, its path, its rage, and then they feasted upon it while singing. "What does this tell you?" "It tells me they do not fear the natural order, they become its master." The ambassador from a desert planet stood with shaking hands. "In my world the Grolok was a legend. We thought it could not be killed, not even by machines. We sent nuclear drones into that jungle once, and even those were destroyed. Yet these humans walked in with knives and seasoning, and now they dine upon our myths." The chamber sat heavy with dread and awe as a new message came through. A short clip from the human camp. One of the soldiers looking directly at the camera, holding up a piece of meat and saying in perfect Galactic common, "Best ribs I ever had. If you're watching this, send more salt." We ran out. The clip ended and no one laughed, no one moved. Only the sound of a single heartbeat echoed in the stillness of the room. It was the sound of fear, mixed with something far worse, respect. The humans had not just survived, they had rewritten the very definition of apex predator, and they did it with smiles. Fire and hunger. The sun rose over the jungle, casting long golden rays across the broken trees and scorched earth. Where the Grolok had once ruled, the air smelled of cooked meat, smoke, and something new, something terrifying to the scouts who had just landed on the edge of the jungle. Their orders were simple: retrieve any human remains, gather environmental data, and confirm if the Grolok had truly been slain. They moved cautiously, weapons drawn, scanning every direction, expecting ambush or bones, but what they found instead made the youngest among them fall to his knees. The clearing was still smoking, and around it sat the humans, laughing, chatting, and eating massive strips of meat pulled directly from the body of the creature that had once been their greatest fear. The skull of the Grolok rested beside the fire, cleaned, polished, and crowned with what appeared to be a flower garland placed there by one of the humans for what they called good vibes. One of the human soldiers spotted the alien team and stood up, waving his hand as if greeting neighbors to a weekend barbecue. "You made it just in time. The ribs are still hot." His voice casual, his tone cheerful. The scouts did not move. Their leader stared at the sight in disbelief. Behind the human were cooking stations crafted from stone's bones and parts of the Grolok itself. Its hide had been turned into tents, its claws into cooking tools, its flesh seasoned and sizzling over controlled fire. Every human had a plate in hand, and not a single one looked hurt or even tired, as if the fight had only fueled them, made them stronger. The lead scout tried to speak, but his translator failed to activate. Whether from the heat or the sheer shock of the scene, he did not know. One human stepped forward, holding out a plate with a smile. "Here, try some. Tastes like victory and barbecue mixed together." The scout did not move. His fingers trembled. His mind raced. The apex predator of their legends, the monster children, were warned about in every colony, and here it was sliced, cooked, and served with a side of friendly laughter. The humans saw their hesitation and stepped back. "No pressure. If you don't want to eat him, we understand cultural stuff and all that. But we're eating every bite. We're not wasteful, and that thing put up a good fight. Deserves to be honored properly through digestion." Another soldier joked, his face smeared with sauce. The scout finally found his voice. "You killed it, and you are eating it." The human looked surprised. "Not just killed him, we hunted him, fought him with blades and flame, drew him into a trap we designed from scratch, and then when he fell, we gave him a warrior's end. We are not here to destroy nature, we're here to earn its respect and to feed the team. This was our test." The scout backed away slowly, unsure if what he saw was bravery, madness, or something else entirely. He turned to his team, but they were already recording everything, streaming the scene to the orbiting ships and to the council itself. Within minutes, every screen in the alien sectors showed the footage, humans laughing as they carved thick cuts of meat from the once untouchable Grolok, fire glowing in their eyes, music playing from a small speaker, and the jungle silent in awe. Many watching screamed in horror. Some wept, others remained still, but a few whispered of legends reborn. The narrative was no longer Grolok, the god beast of the jungle. It was now humans, the devourers Of fear, the chefs of chaos, the masters of apex, the council convened in emergency meetings, wondering how such a species existed, one capable of bonding over shared danger, over meals made from monsters, and still smiling through it all. One elder asked, how do they unite so easily? How do they smile while covered in the blood of their enemy? And a young ambassador answered, because to them this is not just a hunt, it is a story. It is a shared memory, a meal with friends, and a reminder that they do not fear the wild, they embrace it. The humans meanwhile packed up their tools. Leaving no waste, they buried the bones they did not use, marked the clearing with symbols of honor and respect, and then before leaving, one soldier turned to the scouts and said, let your people know this jungle is clear, we're heading to the mountains. Heard something big howls at night, and were low on pepper as the dropship lifted and disappeared into the clouds. The scouts stood in silence, surrounded by ashes, bones, and a lingering scent of roasted myth. Their reports would shake the galaxy, but even words would never be enough to capture the terrifying beauty of what they had witnessed. For humans did not just survive the impossible, they seasoned it and asked for seconds. The story of the feast spread across the stars faster than fire across dry grass. Every corner of the galaxy buzzed with the same headline: humans eat apex predator, and laugh about it from high council chambers to the underground dens of criminal warlords. Everyone had seen the footage of the scarred human chewing on cooked Galactic ribs, while telling jokes and offering seconds to terrified scouts. What had once been considered myth, what had once been called unkillable, now lay in the bellies of smiling earthlings. Many species reacted with fear, some with disbelief, but a few with envy. A movement began on distant planets driven by pride and foolishness, where other species wanted to match the humans, some to prove they were not weak, some to understand the secret of their strength, others out of sheer arrogance. The first to try was a military squad from a cold planet whose warriors were known for crushing steel. With bare hands they landed in the jungle with armored suits and sonic cannons. Within 3 hours all contact was lost, no signal, no return, only silence. The second group came with beasts of war, genetically bred trackers and flamehounds designed for extreme terrains. They too vanished after a few screams caught by their own satellite recorders. Another group brought bombs intending to flatten the jungle and whatever was inside, but they only destroyed themselves, for the Galactic was not alone. Its kind stirred when disturbed, and the jungle was older than any technology. The more they tried, the more they failed, and the more the legend of the humans grew. But the humans themselves never gloated. They simply returned to their ship, cleaned their weapons, washed their gear, and made another campfire, this time on a beach facing the acid sea, roasting the last cuts of Galactic meat with the calm of vacationers. A young alien journalist, brave enough to approach them, asked what gave them the strength, what made them do what others could not. The female soldier laughed and said, we're not stronger, we're not smarter, we just understand something most species forgot long ago. Monsters are just meat with bad attitudes. Another human added, we don't fear the dark, we light it up and make dinner by the flames. These words hit deeper than expected. Entire cultures began questioning their fears, their legends, their beliefs. Even the council that once called humans dangerous now debated if they were simply the next stage of survival, not conquerors, but reminders that limits are illusions shaped by comfort and fear. The skull of the Galactic, cleaned and carved into a ceremonial table, now sat aboard the human ship, surrounded by small carvings, words in different languages, symbols of respect and recipes etched into the bone, not as trophies but as stories. The aliens who had mocked humanity now studied their ways, tried to mimic their drills, their teamwork, their absurd humor that somehow kept them calm in the worst of moments. A general from a swamp world confessed that no simulation, no test, no training had prepared his soldiers to face terror with laughter. He had watched the footage 100 times, the humans laughing even as the Galactic lunged, biting, roaring, tearing through trees, and it shook him every time because he realized the humans were not fearless. They were simply unbroken. One diplomat tried to describe it like this: imagine a species that treats nightmares like invitations, that sees blood as seasoning, that dances on the edge of extinction and calls it fun. And now imagine they are smiling at you, offering you a plate, while telling you they come in peace. One by one systems began to change, policies shifted, treaties rewritten to include Earth as a major influence on frontier missions. Human teams were requested for dangerous operations. Their food rations upgraded, their survival kits turned into templates for others, and the most elite academies added a new course called Human Tactics, unofficially nicknamed How to Laugh at Death and Win. The humans themselves never asked for recognition. They simply moved to their next destination. Heard there was a cave system filled with flying serpents, and they had never tried dragon wings grilled over lava. As they walked away, Their campfire slowly died down behind them, the ashes carried by the wind glowing like falling stars. And in the quiet left behind, the jungle whispered a new truth. Not all predators rule forever. Some are cooked, served, and remembered in stories. Where fear loses its fangs and hunger wins with fire, and Unitith Galaxy held its breath as reports came in from species across multiple sectors, all trying and failing to copy what the humans had done deep inside the jungle of Severk 9. What was once feared was now a symbol of humiliation for those who tried to follow without understanding. And every failure only made the human victory feel more like prophecy on the desert world of Krill. A team of elite hunters trained in ancient war arts landed with sacred weapons drawn from the bones of extinct beasts. They chanted songs of dominance and marched with full ceremony. But the jungle rejected them within hours. They vanished, leaving behind only gear shredded beyond recognition. On the storm planet of Zerith, a coalition of 3 species used drones, hover tanks, and artificial weather to force the apex predator out, but the jungle swallowed their machines. The vines themselves seemed to move against them, and their last broadcast was nothing but screaming static. The jungle had seen what humans were, and it refused anything less. Entire networks began airing specials titled "Why Only Humans," and every expert struggled to explain what made these wild earthborn creatures different. But one alien historian finally spoke during a broadcast, and her voice echoed through all systems. She said, "You look at humans and ask what weapon do they carry, what tech do they hide, but you forget to ask what burns in their chest, because you see claws and teeth and storms, and you call it danger, but they see dinner and an adventure to retell with spice and heat. That is the difference. They do not wait for permission from fear. They invite it to the table and serve it with laughter." Her words ignited something across space. Even the warlords who once mocked humans now watched their old battle footage and saw something new in their eyes. Not madness, but clarity. Not chaos, but rhythm, the kind that only comes when you dance with death and step in tune with your brothers and sisters in fire. Back on Earth, the human team that had started it all returned, not to parades or medals, but to a quiet outpost a few miles outside the training grounds, where new recruits were being taught to cook before they were taught to shoot. The leader of the original mission, the scarred man, now walked with a limp but smiled when he saw the younger soldiers gathered around a fire trying to cook meat properly over coals instead of with synthetics. He sat beside them, offered advice, not about war, but about flavor, about balance, about knowing your prey not just as a threat, but as a creature shaped by its world. He said, "If you understand what it eats, how it moves, how it sleeps, you understand how to beat it, not just with bullets, but with brains. And once you beat it, you eat it, and you honor it, because you're not here to dominate nature. You're here to prove you're worthy of surviving it." His words were recorded and broadcast across thousands of systems, turned into training modules and cultural lectures, not as military doctrine, but as wisdom from a species that had cracked the code of fear and turned it into fuel. Meanwhile, in the alien cities, far from any jungle, statues were being taken down, replaced by new carvings, not of monsters, but of fire and knives. And the human face, with a grin that suggested a joke just told, a few diplomats feared what this meant. If humans could eat a god, what would they do to an enemy? But others saw something deeper. They saw a species that had found unity through struggle, that faced the dark with open arms, not because they lacked fear, but because they embraced it like an old friend. Rumors grew that even the jungle itself had changed, that its beasts no longer roared with the same confidence, as if they remembered the taste of fire and laughter. The scarred human and his team were asked to return to Severk 9, not for another hunt, but to plant a marker, a new symbol, one that would tell future visitors what happened there. They agreed, and when they landed once more on the red soil, they stood silent for a moment, remembering the heat, the screams, the rush of facing death and then defeating it together. They planted a simple object, not a flag, not a statue, but a grill made from Grolok bones, with a single word etched across it in every known language: feast. And they left again without ceremony, their dropship lifting into the sky like a spark into the stars, leaving behind a jungle forever changed and a galaxy that could no longer forget that once upon a time humans came, saw, cooked, and turned terror into tradition. The final feast was held not on Severk 9, not in some hidden jungle or distant battlefield, but in the grand chamber of the Galactic Union, a place once too sacred for blood or fire, now echoing with smells of roasted meat, laughter, and the unmistakable rhythm of human joy. Delegates from over 200 species filled the arena, shaped like a massive dome of starlight, looking down upon the circular gathering space, where the humans had set up camp, not with polished protocol, but with portable grills, folding chairs, crates of spice, and long tables carved from the bones of The Grolak, the skull, rested at the center, decorated not as a trophy, but as a centerpiece, its eyes filled with soft glowing lights, and its teeth wrapped in flower chains. One by one ambassadors arrived, some hiding their fear behind formality, others openly curious, unsure whether to be horrified or honored. As they passed, the humans greeted them, not with stiff bows but with open hands and warm voices. Want a plate? We saved the best cuts for guests, don't mind the smoke, it's got personality. The humans had cooked the final cuts of Grolak meat stored in cryo, since the mission, now grilled to perfection and served with roots, herbs and sauces. From across multiple worlds, the flavors blended into something that defied logic, spicy, sweet, earthy, terrifying in its beauty. Even the strongest species, known for their stone palates, could not help but taste, and once they did, silence fell, not the silence of horror, but of surrender, for something ancient and powerful stirred in that flavor. Something primal, something victorious. The head of the Galactic Council finally stepped forward, a being older than memory, known for wisdom and restraint. It looked down at the humans, then around at the seated delegates, and asked why you could have left it alone. You could have studied it from afar and still been safe. Why go into the jaws of death and risk everything for a meal? The scarred human stood up, wiped his hands on his pants, stepped forward and said, because the galaxy worships fear. It calls danger sacred and wraps it in myth. But we believe if something rules by fear, then we must taste that fear, break it down, chew it, swallow it, and let it become part of our story. We do not run from legends, we rewrite them, and we prefer them with salt. The chamber fell quiet again, until the head of the council smiled, something few had ever seen, and said, then teach us. And the humans nodded without hesitation. Their mission had never been to conquer, it had never been about proving superiority. It was about understanding, through fire, through teamwork, through the dance between hunter and hunted, that defined life itself. In the years that followed, the legend of the Grolak became more than a story of horror. It became a recipe passed across worlds, a tradition that began with terror and ended with unity. Alien families tried their own hunts, not to prove dominance but to bond communities, built kitchens where there had once been bunkers, and every year across multiple planets a feast was held where fear was honored, not as an enemy but as a teacher. The jungle of Severk 9 was declared a galactic preserve, and the bones of every beast that fell were used not for weapons, but for tools, art, music, and meals. The grill left by the humans still stood untouched, its fire renewed by visitors each season, a symbol of courage and curiosity. The human team that started it all eventually retired, scattered across the stars. Some became teachers, others chefs, one even opened a cooking school called Apex Eats, but their names were etched into more than just history. They lived on in every story where fear lost its bite, and in every meal where fire met courage. The galaxy no longer asked who rules the wild, it now asked, what are we making for dinner? And the answer echoed, always with a smile, something bold, something fierce, something that once made us tremble, and now brings us together. The final chapter of this tale unfolded, not in the depths of a jungle, not in the echo of war cries or the shadow of beasts, but in the heart of memory, where stories burn brighter than stars. The humans had done what no one dared, not because they sought power or fame, but because they lived differently. They saw the world not as a place to fear, but as a table to gather round. Every threat, every challenge, every monster was simply another dish waiting for preparation. Their story did not end with the fall of the Grolak, nor with the feast in the galactic chamber. It lived on in the way young warriors across distant systems now trained not just with weapons, but with wits and with flame. It echoed in how even the most proud species learned to smile before a fight, to trust the ones beside them, to face the unknown, not with trembling hearts, but with sharpened blades and spice kits in hand. Long after the fire cooled and the last rib was eaten, the humans returned one final time to Severk 9. This time they brought no weapons, only tools of another kind, brushes, paints, stones, soft cloths. They walked through the clearing where their lives had changed, and where fear had tasted defeat, and they painted murals not of blood, but of unity, not of conquest, but of connection. The Grolak was there, to drawn on stone, with colors made from local roots, shown not as a monster, but as part of the story, an honored part. A fierce rival turned into legacy. Around the mural they planted seeds of new trees, ones that would flower with scent instead of scream, trees whose roots would feed on memory, and whose blossoms would fall like confetti during storms. The jungle did not resist, it watched, and it listened, and the wind that once howled now hummed. And when they finally left, they left behind a small plaque, not made of metal or bone, but of carved wood, with one sentence etched by every hand of the crew. It said, we came hungry and left full, not just of meat, but of meaning the galaxy would never forget. And even as stars burned out and new worlds were born, Someone somewhere would whisper about the time humans walked into the jaws of a god and came out licking their fingers, not because they were reckless, but because they understood that fear is not the end, it is only the beginning of a very good, meld end.